So now that we know that we need to remove the engine, I need to remove the bumper first, starting with this middle grille, which isn't that difficult to take off once you know how. There's just these 4 bolts here, which you get through from in here, and then weirdly on the inside you have to put your hand through the grille and pull this tab up and then pull away to release it. So if you have got fat hands like me, expect to get cut knuckles at this point. So with the radiator grill out of the way, you can see that there are 2 bolts, one here, one over here, that hold the bumper on here, so that's why we had to take that out. And they're pretty rusted, so I'm just going to give them a little spray down, let them soak for a minute, and then come back and blast them with the impact. And I'm also just removing the wheels so that I can get to some of the little Torx heads inside the wheel arch, so I can get the bumper off. So there are a load of these clips here on the bottom of the bumper. You can see one, and then there's one here, and then there's 2 more further back. These have got to come off to unsecure the bottom of the bumper. So there is 1 bolt at the top of the bumper, which is a bit difficult, as you can see. I tried this with the impact first and half chewed it because it's so rusted, so my recommendation would be just to go straight in with the 1/4 inch if yours is as badly rusted as that. Okay, and so now that the bumper is off, I think probably next I'll remove the lights just to get those out of the way, and then we'll start removing the crash bar. And I think that the radiator comes away with its assembly once you disconnect the hoses, but I haven't actually had a look at that yet, so we'll take one thing at a time. So one thing that I am doing is when I remove things, I'm just making sure that I put the screws back so that I don't lose them or get them confused. Nothing worse than like putting a long screw somewhere, putting everything back together, and then realizing that you need that screw for somewhere else. You have to take loads of stuff apart. And now I think we'll take off the crash bar. So the crash bar is on, it's just held on by a few little Torx bolts and some big 13s, I think, holding it into the frame of the car. And now this is basically loose. So all I need to do is disconnect everything here, and I found this one out the hard way in the past because I'm being stupid. Just make sure that the bonnet is supported on something. I tend to hook mine up there. It's a good place to put it. Okay then, so now that I have the front end off of this car, focus. So now that I have the front end off this car, I can focus now on pulling the engine. I haven't got my crane here at the moment, it's on a mobile job. So for the time being, I'm just going to remove many of the ancillaries that are definitely going to be in the way. So many people wonder whether it's worth buying a broken car to replace it, and I guess that the biggest thing that could be wrong with any car is going to be its engine. There's always hidden costs, especially if you were going to DIY it to do an engine. Like, do you replace the cam belt? Do you replace the clutch? The release bearing, which you'll have to reuse from your old car, was the clutch on the old one shot? Sometimes you don't know these things till you take it apart. Will the slave cylinder rip? Will I need to replace O-rings, gaskets? Once I take it apart, will I find out that, you know, my turbo's no good? This is a turbo engine. Fortunately, what I've done is I've bought an engine that has all of the ancillaries on it. So the chances of me having a broken one are still the same. but not quite as bad because I've got spares. So the engine that I did get is a 2008 with allegedly 50,000 miles. You always have to take that with a pinch of salt. It could have been like 59,000 or something, but they don't usually lie. And one thing I will say is I was going to buy a new cam belt to go with it, but this cam belt is in great condition. That hasn't done many miles at all. I've already turned the engine over by hand, so I know it moves. But as far as cam belts go, that looks really good, so I'm not replacing that. The old clutch, you can see there. So the old clutch has got a very unhealthy looking divot in the pressure plate. That's not cool. But fortunately our new clutch has no such thing, which is fantastic. So we don't need to worry about that. We can just get a new clutch release bearing. The old release bearing is shot. So this is the old release bearing. You can hear it's all graunchy, and it was quite burned up as well. Yeah, you can see that it's not really in great condition. It's thrown all its grease, it's collected loads of dirt. Sounds really gritty, and it did judder really. I've actually known this car because it used to be a customer's car. It juddered really badly at low speed, and this is why. So at this point the engine is fully assembled. All this stuff came out. I went back in the reverse. I know I didn't show you pulling the engine itself. I didn't have my crane at the time. When I did have my crane, I was short on time, so I couldn't film it. But basically there's an eyelet here at the front that you hook onto, and then there's one at the back. These are pretty rubbish engines, to be honest, so makes sense that they'd have an easy way to pull it. It's not a super common problem, but it's reasonably common that the oil pump chain snaps, which is a pretty big design flaw, because obviously that's the lifeblood of the engine. So what haven't I changed? Well, I didn't change the thermostat. There was no problem with that before. Obviously I changed the oil filter. I did not change the auxiliary drive belt because it is in good condition. I mean, it still has the writing on it as well. I mean, when they get really old, all that starts to, it's all usually worn off and stuff, and it starts to crack. This one here is in great condition, so I'm not changing it. The pulley and the bearings, bearing rather, because there's only one accessory on this engine, which is just the alternator. Now, if I had to do this again, I'll probably do it a lot faster. It's really difficult. Well, I find it really difficult. See that bottom bolt just there? Let me just see if I can focus it up. Just that bolt there at the bottom is really, really difficult to engage. There's a spring. There's a spring down the back of the alternator, which tensions the belt, and you have to push it back. What I did in the end was I put a pry bar in here, and I levered it down towards the bumper, and then that enabled me to get the bottom bolt there in. That was pretty much that for over there. The reason why you could see it struggling to start is because, like a fool, there is a little bolt just here that bleeds out the fueling system, so you basically have to crack that loose. I just took mine all the way out and then waited until I got a nice even spray of fuel, put it back in, and it fired up first time. Haven't changed the air filter, haven't really given it a good service yet. And there's one thing I still have left to do. The clutch doesn't feel as nice as I would like, so I'm going to bleed that again. It was off for quite a while, so I guess maybe more air got into it than I realised. And also, although it's still at the max level and it appears to be bled through, I haven't run it through a complete... I reused the coolant as well because it looks in good condition. The cooling system overall was not really that bad. It was quite a well looked after car, to be honest. Just a shame about the random engine exploding. So I need to run it through a cooling cycle, and then that'll be it. Everything on this car will be finished. And at some point in the future, I'm going to take this old engine apart and show you what an engine that runs without oil looks like.